Welcome, FMers across the world. Welcome to our first ever Facebook Live from your Financial Management Civilian Career Field team at AFPC. Our topic today is going to be the Academic Year 21 Civilian Developmental Education Call and what employees need to know in building their application. Now, the team is sitting here able to answer all of your questions, so as we go through the presentation, if you have any questions, please post those to the chat feature, and the team here on this end will answer your questions live while we're going through the presentation. The agenda today is going to go over the actual portfolio of the Civilian Developmental Education Call, the timeline, important changes, and then things that you need to know to apply and create a strong package for the academic year 21 process. First, let's talk a little bit about the purpose of civilian developmental education. The Air Force looks at this as developmental opportunities for you in order to meet long-term Air Force leadership needs. The other thing is they break that down into short-term and long-term opportunities, and really the purpose is to help grow and develop you into positions for increased responsibility. And then we also, as civilians, share leadership responsibility with the military. So all of these programs help prepare you in order to support the Air Force at that level. But the bottom line is we want people to be selected for the right training at the right time in their careers to support the Air Force. The timeline this year has shifted from previous years, so you'll note on the timeline this year that we opened the CDE call January 13th. And it's important to know that this particular call opens up to the employee from 13 January through February 28th. After February 28th, the MyVector system will close to employees and only be open for the endorsing officials to complete the endorsement package. The call officially closes on 13 March, and the system will close to endorsing officials at that time. Between April and July, all of the functional development teams will meet to actually score and rack and stack those packages for selection. Then an Air Force selection board will happen in July, and final results will be released sometime between August and September of 2020. Some important information that you need to know for this year's call. First, I already mentioned that the timeline for application has been shifted to the left by 60 days. So keep in mind that your deadlines for the application process is a little bit different than previous years. The next thing that you need to know is that we will be using the Air Force tool called MyVector. You can find that out on the MyPers website. Your application will actually be going through MyVector. The next thing that you can do right now is start discussing programs and things that you might want to apply to with your supervisor. You can start preparing your packages, your resumes, and all of those types of things today. The other thing I want to address is employees that are not assigned to FM personnel. Please make sure that you reach out to your local comptroller wherever you're located to get some advice and guidance on actually filling out your application package. And I'll have another slide on this before the end of the presentation. And then the last two items out there on the slide, we will have a CDE toolkit for FM personnel that has not been posted yet, but as soon as it is available, we will send a MyPers message out letting you know it's posted, and it'll be available on the FM Professional Development Hub. The other thing that will be posted are the MyVector user guides, so you can actually see screenshots on how to do your application package within the MyVector tool. Some changes that happened this year. First, there'll only be one CDE application. In the past, there were multiple applications based on the type of program you were applying to. However, when you go in the system this year, there'll just be one application for you to fill out for civilian developmental education, and then a separate application if you're going to apply for the Civilian Strategic Leader Program. There are 2 new courses for GS-15 equivalents. Those are 1-week leadership courses, and we'll go over those in a later slide. Also this year, candidates will only be selected for one program if they apply to multiple programs. Unless the development team vectors an individual for more than one program, then they may be selected for two. The MyVector resume format is going to be used again this year, so you will not be able to upload your own personal resume format. However, there were many system enhancements this year over last year's version to robust your resume and make sure that you're depicting the right experiences and items within your resume for when you meet the board. Next, there's going to be a MAGCOM functional review of all packages before it actually goes to the development team, and that's going to help ensure that the packages are built in a strong way, depicting the items that the actual development team looks at. The next thing that's different this year is you as an applicant can actually put in proposed endorsement comments. So you would be allowed to craft up some proposed bullets and push those forward to your endorser, and then the endorser has the ability to edit those or accept them as you submitted them before finalizing your package. And then finally, there are multiple levels of review that can be inserted into the package. So depending on the level of endorsement, your package might go from you to your first level supervisor and then straight up to an SES or general officer. The system will allow you to manually insert a second level or a third level reviewer, but you have to manually insert that person's email and information in order for them to review your package before it goes all the way up to the general officer or SES if your package goes to that level. So when you are filling that out, take a look at that. If your organization has some specific guidance on if they would like your second level or third level supervisor to review the package, you will have to put that in manually. The next thing I want to cover is who is your representative. Every Air Force FMer across the world has a representative either at the Civilian Development Team Advisory Committee level or the development team level. So the Civilian Development Team Advisory Committee is the first graph at the top, and those folks are going to be your representatives if you're a GS-13 equivalent or below, and all of those folks are listed there. The next level is going to be the actual development team, and those folks are going to typically represent GS-14 and 15 level individuals. So as you look at the table, look and see which organization you fall under, and that individual listed is going to be your representative. They are going to be your advocate at the financial management development team when your package comes forward. And so it's always a good idea to ensure that you either have a teleconference, send them a note, that type of thing, to let them know what you're applying for, why you're applying for it, maybe even get on their calendar to discuss it, because they will be your advocate at the development team when your package is looked at. How do we evaluate your record? So when you go forward with your package, the development team is going to look at a myriad of things. We look at primarily the What FM Values graphic. And the first thing that you'll see there in the middle, the bullet, is performance. So as you build your resume, there's going to be things that you can build into your resume, things such as awards that you've received, decorations you've received, accomplishments that you've held in each job. Those types of things are going to help speak to your performance and how well you're doing in your job. The other thing that speaks to performance is your endorsement. So your endorser has the ability to address your performance, your potential, and those types of things, and that is how you can be evaluated during the selection process. The next thing I want to highlight on the wheel graphic is your experience. So breadth and depth of experience in your career is another area that's looked at, and when you fill out your resume, you're going to want to make sure that you include all the various assignments you've held, what level you've held those assignments at, and whether or not you've done assignments in various parts of financial management. So maybe in the beginning of your career you did military pay or travel, and then later on you moved over into budget. You're going to want to make sure that you articulate those differences on your resume to show that you have a multitude of experiences in your career. The next thing they're going to look at is the different training that you've had. So they will look at things like functional training. So if you went to the financial management officer course, the professional financial management course, or even the defense financial management course, those are types of things that you can add to your resume to show the functional training you've had. The other piece of training is leadership training. So if you were competitively selected previously for a leadership course, or maybe you went to a local offering at your installation, you want to be sure to add those types of things to your resume to show the various developmental things that you've done previously. The next thing is your certification. So if you're an acquisition professional, you're going to want to make sure that you have your acquisition certification listed on there. And then, of course, most financial managers out there have the DoD financial management certification requirement. Make sure that you add those to your resume as well. And if you're not quite complete with the certifications, but you have an estimated completion date, add in parentheses estimated completion date for your certification so they can see that you're about finished. Then finally, education. So this is going to be your typical education, things like your bachelor's degree, master's degree. Ensure that you add those types of things onto your resume to include if you are currently enrolled. So just like certifications, if you're not quite finished with your bachelor's degree, but your estimated completion date is this May, put that in parentheses next to the degree itself so the board can see that you're almost finished with your degree or when you are going to complete it. The other thing that falls under education is professional military education. And typically for civilians, we look at the officer professional military education, things like Squadron Officer School, Air Command and Staff College, and Air War College. So be sure to add those on there. And then again, if you're enrolled but not yet complete, put your estimated completion date. And for those of you out there who are prior enlisted, don't forget all of the professional military education that you did while you were enlisted. So if you went to the Senior NCO Academy, add that as well. Because although we do focus on the officer PME for civilians, the board does look at all PME and the things that you've accomplished in your career. So add those enlisted PME items as well to your resume because those will be considered when they're scoring your package. So what are some lessons learned from last year? I want to go over some of the pitfalls that we saw when we scored packages last year. The first thing is sometimes a person's record did not necessarily match what they were applying for. And so you do want to make sure that you're applying for the right program at the right time and that your record depicts the types of things that are going to be necessary to be selected for that program. The best way to look at that is look at the What FM Values wheel that I just spoke about and identify what your career gaps are to see where you might fall as somebody who is looking at your record. So there are times that the board does not recommend people forward for the classes that they've been asked to be selected for. And if that does happen, we do provide you individualized feedback as to what might make your package stronger for next cycle. The next thing is, what program are you applying for? Is that the right program for what you've said your career goals are and where you're at in your career? So sometimes when somebody applies to a long-term, very competitive course, the development team looks at your record, looks at the endorsement, looks at your career goals, and believes that you might be better vectored to a short-term, one-week leadership opportunity. So there are times that you might apply for one course, but the development team might vector you to something different. We do reach out to you ahead of time to make sure that you concur with that recommendation before we do push your package forward for further consideration in that class. Also, make sure that you think about more than one class that you might apply for. And here's why. Sometimes maybe your number one request isn't the right fit, or maybe your record doesn't meet what the development team thinks is the best fit for you individually. But they will look at your second or third request. And so sometimes you might get selected for that second or third request, but if you only do put in one course, then we don't have another opportunity to vector you to. And then finally, on the Civilian Strategic Leader Program, be sure that this aligns with your career goals, and also you're looking at it as a developmental opportunity. Although there are great ways for you to get promoted in the Cslip program, it's really not intended to be a promotion program. It's intended to be a developmental program. And then finally, there are times when people have applied in the past where it just wasn't the right time in their career to go and do a developmental opportunity. So for example, if you're a Palace Acquire intern and you just started that internship, we do look to you doing at least 2 to 3 years of your internship before you apply to a leadership development program. And the reason for that is because there's so much training functionally that we want you to focus on during your 3-year training program that it's really difficult for us to also set aside time to weave in the leadership training. So just take a look at the timing and whether or not it's the right time for you to apply to a program. So how do you pick what's the best program for you? How do you go about doing that? We're recommending 3 key elements when you go and take a look at whether or not a program is right for you. The first thing I previously mentioned was take a look at the What FM values and determine where your career gaps are on that wheel. And this will kind of give you an idea of how competitive your package is going to be, what type of training and education you might need in order to fill those career gaps, and then whether or not a certain program you were thinking about is the right fit. The second thing you want to do is do a little bit of soul searching, as I call it. You're going to want to think about your personal and professional career goals and kind of think out 3 or 5, 7 years from now to see what those might be. You can then look at the program descriptions and what the competencies are that that class is hitting on to see if that helps meet some of those career goals that you have in the future. You want to pick classes that are going to enhance your experience and help you grow the competencies that you're looking to grow to achieve those future goals. And then finally, we want you to talk to either a mentor, your supervisor, or other leadership that you are familiar with. Talk to them about if a program is right for you. Is it the right time in your program? Think about whether or not a short-term or a long-term developmental opportunity is best for you. And one way to look at that is thinking through, are you mobile now or mobile in the future? Because that might determine which program you would be eligible to apply for. And then the other thing is look at the different types of opportunities. So there's leadership development opportunities, which are going to typically be 1-week training courses. There's also professional education, which are going to be a little bit more long-term in nature, things like Air Command and Staff College, or experiential opportunities. And those are going to be the things like Civilian Strategic Leader Program and Education with Industry, where you're actually going to go out and get some experience in this developmental opportunity. And then finally, think about timing. And it's not just timing in your career, it's timing about where you are in your work-life balance situation. Are there things going on right now in your life that might preclude you from being able to participate in these different events? I talked a little bit about whether or not you're a trainee, Palace Acquire, or in some other developmental opportunity. While you're doing those other developmental opportunities, it's typically not the right time for you to apply to another developmental opportunity. But every situation is unique, so talk to your mentor, talk to your supervisor on whether or not that's the right fit for you if you are in a developmental opportunity. If you've recently started a new job or you're getting ready to start a new job, you might want to wait for a cycle or 2 before you apply to the Civilian Developmental Education Call. And then also take a look at when was the last time that you actually participated in one of these events. If you went last year, maybe you want to apply the knowledge you learned to that from that class for a year or 2 and then apply to another developmental opportunity after you've been able to apply the competencies and the things that you learned during that training. So now I'm going to transition to different courses that you may be able to apply for. And before I talk about some individual ones, I'm going to turn it over to Yolanda so she can show you exactly where you can go on MyPers to look at each course description, eligibility requirements, and what competencies those developmental opportunities are going to hit on.
Thank you, Ms. Moore. To gain access to the MyPers article, please type the URL address below into your browser. It will prompt you to use your CAC login to gain access. It then takes you directly to the Force Development page. Once you are on the Force Development page, you will see a lot of information regarding civilian development. Midway of the page, you will find the MyVector links to include the various user guides. Right below the MyVector links, you will find the Civilian Developmental Education programs with information applicable to each portfolio. Ms. Moore will discuss each portfolio later in the briefing. If you have any problems navigating the site, please feel free to contact us here on the Career Field team. Now back to Ms. Moore.
So there's different categories that you may apply for during the call. The first one is basic developmental education. And typically these opportunities are going to be for folks that are in the grades of GS7 all the way up to GS12 or 13 in some instances. Or if you're in a different pay plan, the equivalent grade set. I won't go into each course that's being offered, but if you go out to the MyPers website, you'll be able to research each one. After basic developmental education, the next portfolio is going to be the intermediate developmental education, and typically this is going to target folks in the GS12 and 13 categories or those equivalent pay bands and if you're in a different pay system. Things like Air Command and Staff College, you can apply to a master's degree program, and if you look here on the slide, only the items listed in red require mobility agreements. So we do have lots of opportunities for folks that might not be mobile at this time geographically. And the other thing that I want to highlight is Air Command and Staff College specifically. Air Command and Staff College does not always require mobility. The way that is looked at is you can apply for Air Command and Staff College, go into TDY status, and go back to your previous installation at the end of that, so long as we as a financial management community can guarantee that you won't go back to your same job. So if you are in a location where we have a lot of financial management positions, that's going to typically be the locations where there's a MAGCOM, a COCOM, maybe in the Pentagon, or in addition to a regular base wing function, more than likely we can guarantee that you're not going to go back to the same position. But if you are at a smaller installation where we have a small comptroller squadron, then we're most likely not going to be able to guarantee that you won't be able to go, if you're at a smaller comptroller squadron location, we're not going to most likely be able to guarantee you go to a different job when you go back. So in that instance, we would most likely ask you to sign a mobility agreement so we can assign you to a new position at the end of school. The next category is senior developmental education, and this is going to be typically for your GS14 and 15 or other pay band equivalents. Again here, those highlighted in red do require mobility, and the ones not highlighted in red do not require mobility. So just as I mentioned with Air Command and Staff College, Air War College is the same category. So we may or may not require mobility if you do apply to Air War College. And again, that's going to be dependent upon where you're currently located and whether or not we can guarantee you can come back to that base, but to a different position. So again, the locations where we have a lot more FM positions are going to be the places that we would not require somebody to sign a mobility agreement. I mentioned at the very beginning that there's two new GS15 classes. The first one listed there is the Avoiding Executive Derailment, and the second one there is Leading Change and Innovation. There's 12 quotas each for that, and those are going to be in the application this year for GS15s. Before I transition to the Civilian Strategic Leader Program, I just wanted to highlight for each of those programs that I just talked about for basic developmental education, intermediate developmental education, and senior developmental education, you saw on the slides quotas next to each course. Those quotas are Air Force-wide quotas, and they are not specific to financial management. So as you're looking at each course and you look at the number of quotas, you can gauge how competitive that program might be. So for example, in the intermediate developmental education portfolio, we have the DoD Executive Leadership Development Program. There are only 10 quotas across the entire Air Force for that particular course. So as you can imagine, that one will be more competitive since it has less quotas. And then on the opposite end of that, if you look at leading with impact on the same slide, we have 180 quotas across the Air Force for that particular class. So in that instance, you might have a better chance of getting into leading with impact, or it might not be quite as competitive than the ELDP class that I mentioned. I'm going to transition now to the Civilian Strategic Leader program. Again, as I mentioned, if you're applying for this program, there will be a separate application within MyVector itself for this program. What is Cslip? First of all, Cslip is going to be a leadership and development program that puts you in a developmental opportunity to become an enterprise leader. It's broken out into two different categories. One are the Deputy Director for Installation Support, and these are going to be your GS-14 equivalents out at the installations, and typically they'll be similar to what you would think of as a deputy group, a deputy mission support group director. What are the eligibility for those positions, and what are they looking at when they're selecting people for those? They're looking at you being at least 12 months in your current position. They're looking at you at least being a GS-13 or 14 for 12 months. And then you also have to have at least 12 months of previous supervisory experience. The bachelor's degree requirement and base level requirement is also there. So your package is going to be most competitive when you meet these requirements. Now, if you're a GS-13, you are able to apply for promotion into one of those GS-14 positions. And if you are in that situation, keep in mind there's a two-step process for you. First, you have to go out to a USA Jobs announcement that will be posted out there. And this is because you need to apply competitively for promotion. And then the second step for you is to actually fill out your application and submit it through the process. If you're a GS-14, and you would like to apply for one of those, then you do not have to apply to the USA Jobs announcement in order to be considered for the Cslip assignments. In addition to the Deputy Director for Installation Support, Cslip has another category for GS-14s and 15s only, and these are going to be joint assignments, headquarters Air Force assignments, or secretariat level assignments at the Pentagon. In this case, you cannot apply for promotion. You already have to be at the grade level of the assignment. And what they will be looking for in your application process is that you have at least 12 months in your current position, that you are either a GS-14 or 15, and that you have at least 12 months of previous supervisory experience, in addition to having a bachelor's degree. Out on the MyPers website, which Yolanda walked you through a few minutes ago, they do have a list of anticipated vacancies that will be coming open. So when you do apply for Cslip, it will be one of these vacancies that is listed here on the next two slides, or you can go out to the MyPers website and take a look. The first set of assignments at the very top of the slide are going to be your Deputy Director for Installation Support assignments, and then the second category or second set of assignments below are going to be your Headquarters Air Force and Joint COCOM assignments that are going to be available. So what I'd like to do now is transition to how you build a strong package. As you're putting together your application, there's going to be a lot of things that you can do to stand out to the development team. The first thing is make sure that you use the Financial Management CDE Toolkit that I mentioned at the very beginning. We will be posting that over the next couple days to week or so as we were waiting for a couple additional screenshots on how to actually log into MyVector. We're just waiting on those to post it. But where do you find it? You can go out to the link that I have listed there on the slide, and that is going to be our FM Professional Development Hub. You can download it from there and utilize everything inside of it to help you build your package. The next thing that you're going to want to do is make sure that you update your resume within MyVector. So MyVector itself is going to pull all of your information from DCPDS automatically for you. However, when it pulls that information over, it does not always articulate everything that you want to articulate in your resume. So you will want to go into MyVector, make changes to your resume, update your resume so you can put your best foot forward on your resume itself. Make sure that you do a couple things in particular. Number one, you want to make sure to update all of your duty titles within the system itself, because it's going to automatically pull over the technical duty title over onto your actual resume. And in the toolkit, we have an example of how we would like you to write your duty title, grade, series, and things like that. The next thing that you're going to want to do is make sure that you add results and accomplishments to each job you've held. So if you don't make any updates to your resume, it's just going to show the job you've held. It's not going to tell us what your duties were. It's not going to tell us what your responsibilities were in that job. And it's not going to tell us what your accomplishments were while you were in that job. So please make sure that you go in and edit each job you've held to include your duties, responsibilities, and major accomplishments or results that you did while you were in that job. Then finally, the next thing on that slide is going to be think through your career goals, because as part of your application, you're going to have to put in your short and long-term career goals. I do recommend that you seek out a mentor or a supervisor to take a look at what you put in for those career goals and aspirations so they can give you a second look on what you've put together. But the main thing is understanding the programs that you want to apply to so you can articulate the competencies that those programs are going to provide you and how that is going to help you in the future achieve your career goals. Something to keep in mind, promotion might be a result of attending one of these opportunities, but it should not be a direct goal. So what I mean by that is if you go to a developmental opportunity that, let's say, builds some leadership skill sets because you do want to be a supervisor over the next few years, you would want to talk about how that course is going to help build up your leadership capabilities to prepare you for supervisory responsibilities rather than say directly, I want to get a promotion to GS13 and be a branch chief of this particular office. Now, we do understand that would most likely be the result of you attending that class, but really we're looking at what are you going to grow and develop in these leadership opportunities or these developmental opportunities to help you achieve that future goal. You also want to address timing on how this program is going to help you either 2 years from now, 3 years from now, or even 5 years or more in achieving your career goals. And then finally, think about what is the return on investment. Return on investment for you, but also return on investment for the Air Force. How is this developmental opportunity going to help the Air Force and you in the future? So in building a strong package, there is one additional thing that I want to talk about. For all of you out there who are an FMer by trade, but do not work for an FM supervisor, this is for you. We want to make sure that you get the right advice and information to build the strongest package possible. And so if you're not assigned to an FM supervisor, we highly, highly, highly encourage you to reach out to either your local comptroller, wherever you're located, or if you go back to that slide that had your Civilian DT Advisory Committee representative, reach out to your rep to get some advice and guidance in helping prepare your package. The other thing that's really going to help you by reaching out to them is, remember I said, they're your representative, your advocate once we get to the development team itself. So by reaching out to them ahead of time, they get to know you, they get to help you with your package, and then when they actually get into the board itself, they can talk about what your career goals, aspirations are, and what it is you're trying to apply for. So please, please reach out to either your local comptroller if you're at an installation, or reach directly out to the Civilian DT Advisory Committee representative that is for your MAGCOM, COCOM area. So, if you have any questions about anything we talked about today and you're not able to ask it here online in the Facebook Live, you can always reach out to your career field team here at AFPC. The main points of contact for the Civilian Developmental Education Call are going to be the folks at the Force Development team here listed on the far right, Miss Yolanda Footman, Christine Cavanis, and Adam Bruya. And then at the very bottom there, you can see what our workflow box email address is and our phone number. And then one final plug, if you have not joined us on our Facebook group, please join our Facebook group and share with your friends, U.S. Air Force Financial Management Civilian Career Field Team, because we do post a lot of information and updates out there for you to get as they come up. So this will conclude our formal presentation. I wish you all good luck in your application process for the academic year 21 Civilian Developmental Education Call.